Well, greetings, everybody. Here in the States, Ethiopia, Israel, Djibouti, wherever you may be, or maybe viewing this. Today is Peshach. In English, that's Passover. By show of hands, how many know what Passover is? Okay, that was one. I'm pretty sure you know what Passover is, huh? Okay, so that's two. I'm gonna give you the clip note version, and from time to time, I'll be putting up slides here on the wall for you all to view. But Passover, in a sense, is when the children of Israel had went to Egypt. We ended up becoming enslaved for a amount of years, and in order to be set free, we had to cry out to our Creator. So then Yah came and He created a sense of, I guess, steps that we call plagues that would allow the Egyptians to finally let us go, culminating with the last plague with the death of the firstborn, regardless of whom it was. The only way that you could be kept exempt from this death was to bear the blood of the lamb on the doorpost and the lintel, which we'll talk about later. And this is for Israelite or Egyptian, no matter who you were. If you did not have that blood on the doorpost and the lintel, the angel of death would visit you, and someone in your household would have died. Because one thing's for certain, two things for sure. Every family has a firstborn. And it wasn't just human lives, it was also animals as well. So this was done to rock the rest of the economy in Egypt. And this is known as Passover, because when you had the blood of the lamb on your doorpost, then the angel would pass over you and go on to the next house and whoever. So when we say Passover, we're really talking about the angel of death, which passed over all of Israel and those people who had the blood and was covered literally in the blood of the lamb. And then we'll also correlate that to the Mashiach, whom the world calls Jesus. We call him, or as Hebrew name, Yahshua. So I want to start off in Exodus really quickly. And this is what Yah is speaking to Moses. We're going to go in Exodus 12 from verses 1 all the way down to 14. It says, Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, that's Moses' older brother, by the way, in the land of Egypt, saying, this month is the beginning of the months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, on the 10th day of this month, each one of them is to take for himself a lamb, according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household. It says, and if the household is too small for the lamb, then let him and his neighbor in the house take it according to the number of the beings, according to each man's need. You may count for the lamb. Let the lamb be perfect. It has to be a perfect one. A year old, and then you take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day. So on the 10th day is when you picked out the lamb. On the 14th day is when you would actually go to sacrifice in the same month. Then it says, all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it between the evenings. Between the evenings literally means what we're doing right now. Biblically, all days started in the evening, not at sunrise. I know here in the West and really all over the world, the day started at sunrise. However, this is back then. We didn't have clocks. And quite contrary to what we've been taught, everybody didn't get up at sunrise. Like I explain all the time. If you didn't have a job, when's the last time you got up with the sun? Even if you got a job, did the sun greet you or did you greet the sun? So a lot of us back then, we didn't get up with the sun. So we wouldn't have seen it. But everybody's up to see sunset. Everybody. Here in Atlanta, it's a party city. So I know people who don't even get up past 2 p.m. They just won't because they are not there. However, they may not ever see a sunrise, but they're up to see the sunset. So that's something that everyone can see. So between the evenings, it's literally between this evening and the evening of the following day. So our days begin at sunset. Hence why we're doing this service right now at sunset and not at sunrise. But anyway, back to scripture says, it says between the evenings, and we're in verse 7 right now. It says, and they shall take some of the blood and put it on 2 doorposts and the lintel of the house where they eat it. And they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire with unleavened bread, with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, no boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and its inward parts. And you do not leave of it until morning, meaning don't leave anything remaining. It says, until the morning, and you are to burn with fire the remains. And this is how you are to eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is the Passover of Yahweh. And I shall pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and I shall smite all of the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And on all the mighty ones, or the gods of Egypt, I shall execute judgment. I am Yahweh. And the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you. And let the plague not come on you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall observe it as a festival to Yahweh throughout your generations. Observe it as a festival and everlasting law. That, in a nutshell, is what Passover is. And the reason why we were to eat the Passover lamb standing up is because we were getting ready to leave. We were going to leave that night. So normally when you make bread, you include what's called yeast. Yeast is what makes the bread puffy and squishy, but when you don't add the yeast, it's flat. In Hebrew, it's known as the matzah bread. We didn't add the yeast because we didn't have time to let the bread naturally rise. We had to eat it in haste. We ate it with our loins girded, our sandals tied. Your loins girded simply means that your tunic would have been tied. You're ready to go. Got your staff in your hand. You better get up out of there. And that's what's about to happen. This angel of death is about to descend upon the entire land of Egypt, which by this time, as you see later on, is in complete darkness. There's no light in Egypt. And so we're about to leave. As soon as this angel comes and finishes doing what it's doing, we're about to go. So that's how we're supposed to eat the Passover lamb. From here, I want us to go to Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 1 through 2. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 1 through 2 says, guard the month of Abib, and perform the Passover to Yahweh your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahweh your Elohim brought you out of Egypt by night. And you shall slaughter the Passover to Yahweh your Elohim from the flock of the herd in the place where Yahweh chooses to put his name. Abib in Hebrew means green ears. Green ears of what? Barley. So that they make beer and all these other goods with barley, right? Barley would spring up in the spring and its ears would be green. It wasn't fully ripe yet. When it became brown, then you could harvest it. So when you hear Abib in the Bible, that's the New Year. Here's another contradiction. Here in the West, our New Year starts in January, in the dead of winter. But again, we didn't have clocks back then. So Yah's whole thing is being able to see and identify. So he set the stars and the months and the sun and all these things to evolve to give us signs. In Hebrew, that's known as Moed or Moedim. It simply means appointed times. Passover is one of them because Passover, it takes place in the beginning of our year, in the month of Abib, and that's in the spring. See, in the dead of winter here, nothing grows. And if you were just to naturally observe winter and New Year's Eve going into New Year's, there'd be nothing to indicate that it's a new year. It's the dead of winter. The ground is frozen. The weather is cold. The trees are stripped bare. There are no insects whizzing around. No one's doing anything, really. Even us, we like to stay inside the house in the winter. It's just not inviting. But you should like on a date like today, right? It's pretty outside. You want to be outside. You want to be riding your scooters because now you feel the newness of life. This is Yah's plan. This is New Year's. So the world tells us one thing, but his word tells us another. And then you have to decide for yourself as to which you will follow. Right? So Passover took place in the New Year, which biblically was in the spring. Our days biblically began at sunset and not at sunrise. From here, I want us to go to Isaiah 66. Now, when the prophet Isaiah is writing it, he's talking about the latter days that we're about to, well, some would already tell you that we're in, but he's also talking about the kingdom coming. Here in chapter 66, verse 23, he says, and it shall be that from one new moon to new moon, and from one Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come worship before me, declares Yahweh. There are some who believe that Passover and things of this nature are feasts that are only for Jews or, I don't know, Christians, whatever the case may be. In the book of Isaiah, we're told that all flesh one day is going to come worship before him. Right now it's optional, but when this Mashiach returns, it will be compulsory. You won't have a choice to worship. For the true believer, our job is to go ahead and start worshiping him now, so that when it is compulsory, it's not grievous unto us. It's something that we want to do. We want to know his ways. We want to worship before him. We want to dwell with him, you know. So Isaiah 66 kind of kills that whole notion that this is only for one specific group of people. This is for any and everybody. I want us to go all the way back to Genesis chapter 15. Because if we're going to talk about the Passover, it doesn't start in Exodus, what most people will believe. It actually starts way back in Genesis, because Yah prophesies exactly what's going to happen to the children of Israel, to our patriarch, a man known as Abraham. Abraham is called that because his name, Abraham, literally means man of many children, or father of many children. That Ab or that Abba in Hebrew means father, as you all know. Abraham or Aham means many children or many nations. He's the first Hebrew recorded in the Bible. And this is what Yah tells him. Okay, so it says in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. And he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed ought to be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. This is talking about us being in Egypt, where they kept us enslaved, and then he initially ended up freeing us. And this is almost 1,500 years before we actually end up in Egypt, that Abraham is being told us about his descendants. Abraham had a son named Isaac. Isaac had a son named Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons, one of which is Joseph. Joseph is sold by his brothers into slavery. He goes to Egypt. There's a great famine in the land. Everyone comes to see Joseph because Joseph has made provisions for everyone, including his family. And that's how we all end up in Egypt. It started off pretty good here, but over the time, they ended up putting taskmasters over us, and we became enslaved. Up until the point that we cried out and Yah freed us. That's how we got in Egypt. From here, I want us to go back to Exodus. We're going to go to chapter 1. And now we'll start to see what's going on with this Passover and these judgments that Yah is placing upon Egypt. Okay, so let me speed you guys up real quick. By this time, we are outnumbering the Egyptians. Our women are producing babies quicker than the Egyptians. And by this time, the Pharaoh that was around during the time of Joseph had already died twice over. And there was a new Pharaoh who didn't really know or respect the people who lived there. And he was afraid that these Hebrews who were not Egyptian would become so large that if Egypt was to have an enemy, that the Hebrews would side with them. So the Pharaoh says, listen, we need to kill off all the little babies. Not just any babies, but Hebrew babies. And not just any Hebrew babies, but the little boys. For all the boys in the room, you got to understand this here. The devil does not want this one. He does not want this one. He does not want this one. He wants you. He's been trying to kill you since day one. He tried to kill off Adam. He couldn't kill off Adam by himself, so he used Adam's wife. Brought sin and death into the land as a result. Eve disobeying Yah in the Garden of Eden is not what caused sin. It was Adam's act to disobey that caused the sin. And Adam had a wife that he loved. Like you, like me, we're going to have women, children, things that we love, and our heart can be coerced. So that's how he did it. Here, almost 2,000 years later, we're in Egypt. And they were taking little boys younger than you, drowning them in the Nile River. You can't defend yourself. And they have orders. When you see any mother giving birth to a Hebrew baby, a Hebrew boy, drown them. Take them out. See, the thing about it is if you take out the men, you euthanize them, you're left with the women. The women are easier to handle. The women are not going to join the armies in ranks and fight against you. The women are not going to take up arms and rebel against the status quo, but the men are. That's our job. We've always been warriors. And because of so, if we take that bow and arrow and we aim it directly at the enemy, well then you're his number one enemy. And you're his number one priority. And anything and everything around you can and will be used against you. Understand that. Starting now. Because he doesn't give you a fair start. Because if he did, he wouldn't be drowning little Hebrew baby boys before the age of 2. Understand that. Right? So this is what's happening right now. Pharaoh is telling the midwives, to the Hebrew women, this is what he says to them. Right? In chapter 1, verse 15, he says, Then the Pharaoh of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. And he said, When you deliver the Hebrew women and see them on their birth stool, stop. What's a birth stool? It literally looks like a stool that the woman would squat on. Just like that. Another thing that they do here in the West is we give birth to our babies with the women on their backs. That's not how we did it anywhere back in the day. The women would squat. Gravity would take over the process. And it typically was a lot safer. Though we didn't have all the antiseptics and everything like that, the baby would just simply come out. Under the birth stool, you'd have either a cushion or the midwife to receive the baby and then immediately give it to the mother. That's how it was done. And this is what the Bible is telling you right now. It goes against modern medicine and modern science. But again, you got to choose for yourself this day, whom shall you believe and whom shall you follow. That's every person's choice to make. It says, when you see them on their birth stools, if it is a son, then you shall put him to death. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared Elohim. Elohim is a Hebrew word meaning mighty ones. When it's speaking of Elohim, it's always talking about Yahweh. So they feared Yah. And they did not do as the king or the Pharaoh of Egypt commanded them, and kept the male children alive. So they disobeyed his orders. He told them, like, when you go in there and you help them women give birth, this a boy, drown him, kill him. But they feared him more than they feared the person down here. Another lesson. A lot of us end up fearing these police officers. We fear these judges. We fear our bosses. We fear Mr. Rent Man. They tell us to do something that we know is against our moral. What are you going to do? The scripture says, fear not he who can destroy the body, but fear he who can destroy the body and the soul. So I would suggest that you be like these midwives and fear the one up top more than the one down. So they left the boys alive, and the king found out, the Pharaoh, and he called for the midwives and said to them, Why have you done this and kept the male children alive? And the midwives said to Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are lively and they give birth before the midwives come to them. Meaning that their birth is quick. Before they can even get in there with their stuff, the little babysitter. And like, yo, they gave birth, it was so quick we couldn't find, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, Elohim was good to the midwives, and the people increased and became very numerous. And it came to be because the midwives feared Elohim that he provided households for them. And Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, Throw every son who was born into the river, and keep alive every daughter. So he repeats himself. The first time he only says it to the midwives. Now he's decreeing it upon the whole land. This has become a martial law. It's like the president of here is saying, any black baby boys, kill them. Kill them. Now what are you going to do? This is an executive order coming from the commander-in-chief himself. What are you going to do? You're going to comply or you're going to die? This is what sets the tone for whom we know as Moses, whose name you're going to find out literally means drawn out of water. The same water that his cousins were being drowned in this Nile River. If you go to chapter 2, here we're going to find out that Pharaoh's daughter sees Moses. Chapter 2, verse 5 says, and the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. This is the Nile River. And her young women were walking beside the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her female servant to get it, and opened it, and saw the child, and see, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him, and said, this is one of the children of the Hebrews. And her sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go call a nurse for you from the Hebrew woman to nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, then I shall pay you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moshe, or Moses, saying, because I have drawn him out of the water. So here's what happened. Pharaoh's daughter, whom I personally believe that she may not been able to have children, because any woman wouldn't want to adopt a child that didn't look like them, or maybe it came from their culture if they could have their own. But because maybe she couldn't, and she's down there bathing herself, and they see this ark. I find it funny that the Bible says that Moses is in an ark floating down this river. But she sees this wicker basket, this ark, with this child in it, and they pull him out. She sees him and instantly sees that he's a Hebrew child. Something gives him away, and it wasn't his skin color, because as you see, she took that child back in Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh said, kill all the little boys, the little Hebrew boys. So Pharaoh had to think that this man was an Egyptian, and we know that the Egyptians were dark. They were black. So the Hebrews had to have looked like the Egyptians in order for Moses to pass for one. You're bringing him straight to the belly of the beast. And Pharaoh falls in love with Moses. Moses is raised up in Pharaoh's court, as you'll see later on. He's taught, given the best education. He's dressed like an Egyptian. He eats Egyptian raw food, everything, the whole nine, because he is now on royalty. But he's not an Egyptian. He just looks like one. This point, I want us to go to chapter 3, and I'm going to elapse again. By this time, Moses had seen an Egyptian treating and beating badly on a Hebrew, and he lost it. He got angry. He got into it with the Egyptian, and he ended up killing him. He hid the body because he looked and seen that nobody had seen him. He hid the body and buried the Egyptian in sand. Now, this is an Egyptian he killed. He didn't kill any Egyptian. He killed an Egyptian of the royal army. This is like killing an FBI agent here in America. All right? You're worried are wanted for not just murder, but even high treason. So then the following day, he sees two Hebrews arguing. And he goes and intervenes. And he asks one of the Hebrews, says, why are you doing that to him? And the Hebrew says, well, who are you? Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian? Moses got scared. He found out that they knew what he had done, so he fled. He left for fear of being caught for high treason, murder, among the other things. Word did get back to Pharaoh, and they issued a warning for his arrest. Not just a warning, but Moses was wanted dead or alive, and at the time what was known as the mightiest empire on earth. He was wanted by the Egyptian antiquities or the forces themselves. The same place that he once dwelled and was part of the court, now they want him. He leaves. He leaves and he goes to a place known as Midian, far, far away. He gets married, has some children. He's thinking, that's behind me now. Years go by. But he walks across this mountain and he sees this burning bush that isn't consumed. So finally, he's like, why's that bush still burning? And he goes up there, curiosity gets the best of him, right? And when he goes there, he hears a voice. The voice tells him to first take his shoes off because the ground that you're standing on is holy. Take it off. So he takes off his sandals. Moses is then given direct instructions to go back to Egypt. Leave your life of comfort, go back to where you're wanted, and free your people. And honestly, you can understand the dialogue between Moses and the Most High. I really don't want to do that. Number one, I got to go back to the desert. Number two, I have a good life. Got a good wife. Got these little shepherds and everything like that. Everything's good. He asked them, he says, well, when I go there, how am I to know that you have my back? So in verse 12, 12 in chapter 3. And he said, because I am with you, this is to you the sign that I have sent you. Now this is the Most High. This is Yah talking to Moses. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, when you are to serve Elohim on this mountain, and Moses said to Elohim, see, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the Elohim of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And Elohim said to Moshe, Ahaya Asher Ahaya, meaning in Hebrew, I will be who I will be, or literally, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, Ahaya, which is the elongated form of Yahweh or Yahuwah, has sent me to you. And Elohim said further to Moshe, thus you are to say to the children of Israel, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, Elohim of Abraham, Elohim of Yitzchak or Isaac, and Elohim of Yaakov or Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my remembrance to all generations. This is one of the very few times you see him actually giving out his personal business card with this direct name on it. Because you'll read later on that he didn't reveal himself to Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob by that name. They called him El Shaddai, which is Hebrew, and it literally means God Almighty. They didn't know his personal name. So now Moses has a personal name to go and tell these people, hey, your God, your mighty one is calling you out, and this is his name. So that's what he does. I want us to go to chapter 5 really quickly. We're going to read verses 1 and 2. Moses is back in Egypt, and he's talking with Pharaoh, him and his brother Aaron. They're petitioning for Pharaoh to let the Hebrew people go. And it says, afterwards Moses and Aaron went in and said to Pharaoh, thus saith Yahweh Elohim of Israel, let my people go so that they shall keep a festival to me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, who is this Yahweh that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I don't know Yahweh, nor am I going to let Israel go. Here's what you guys got to understand. In Egypt, they had a book of gods. They had a God for pretty much every day of the week, every day of the year. Listed, you can go check. While Moses is speaking with the Magi or the Pharaoh's wise men were most likely doing it was flipping through the pages. Yahweh, Yahweh. And they report to Pharaoh. We don't see no Yahweh. We don't know. Pharaoh says, I've never even heard of Yahweh that I should obey him. Where is his exploits? Who is he the God of? What has he done? You're in the land of enchantment, magical spells, sorcery, you name it. That's what Egypt was good for. Ain't no one that ever heard of the name Yahweh, let alone for the God of King Pharaoh himself to obey. But whoever did not know Yah and what he can do, then clearly by the end of this chapter would. And this is why this dialogue is important. Because no one knows Yah, save for the people who have been calling upon him. Us, his children. In the same chapter, I want to take us to verses 22. It says, and Moshe returned to Yahweh and said, Yahweh, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you send me? For ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all. The reason why Moses is saying this to Yahweh is because when they went to Pharaoh, and they threw down everything and said, yeah, you better let us go in the name of Yahweh, yeah. Well, Pharaoh said, nigga, I got something for you. Not only am I not going to let y'all go, but I'm going to increase your workload. You are to make bricks. Normally you would make bricks with mud and straw. And it'd be like Play-Doh. You pack it, form it, bake it. He says, now make the bricks with no straw. Now you're taking mud and trying to really, and it's harder now. So now the people are groveling, they cracking the whip even harder. Psh, work harder. Psh. Longer work days, less rest, less water, less food. So Moses is like, yo, y'all, listen, man, I went to go do what you told me to do, yeah. But not only are we not freed, they made our workload even heavier. And I went in your name. Remember the name that you told me that they would listen to. So it's almost it's like borderline mockery almost. Because we know how important his name is and what it signifies. Because even the demons scatter and bow at his name.